Hey everyone, my name is Renzy Neffshade and I represent Extinction Rebellion here in Pittsburgh. And I'm going to just give a very brief overview of the introduction. My goal is to keep it at 5 minutes or less so there's plenty of time for actual discussion. So if it goes over 5 minutes, if everyone could look at their watches and if it does, just Helen will raise her hand. Great, cool, okay. So like I said, this is just gonna be a brief summary. Okay, introduction. So in the introduction, Naomi Klein opens up by talking about how the youth climate strike kind of began and how children and teenagers and younger adults around the world are indeed beginning to organize and in a way are delivering their moral verdict on the people and institutions who have known for decades about the dangers of climate change and the ecological crisis we're going through. She talks a lot about Greta Thunberg and how she kind of rose to be this climate change superstar, what Greta went through with learning about climate change, the severe depression that she went through, and how she was eventually diagnosed with autism. And I don't know about anyone else in this room, but when I read that, I saw glimpses of my own battles with depressive episodes when it comes to climate change. Maybe I hadn't stopped eating, but that really resonated with me as somebody who has neurological disorders as well, just that helplessness that you feel. But instead of continuing to be in that depressive episode, what Greta and other people her age and other people older than her around the world have been deciding to do is to start actually acting like we're in the middle of an emergency, because we are, right? We're to stop acting like everything is normal when normal would, quote, would lead straight to catastrophe, unquote, because that's exactly where our normal is taking us. And Mike Stout did the quote that I had underlined in here: "I want you to panic, our house is on fire." And I also strongly resonate with, I don't want to hear about hope anymore. I want us to actually feel that panic, feel that need to do something drastic, because that's exactly what we need to do. And I also thought it was really interesting on page 14 how Naomi Klein talks about during normal non-emergency times, the capacity of the human mind to rationalize, to compartmentalize, and to be distracted easily is an important coping mechanism, right? But when it comes to our new reality here of climate breakdown, those traits that have helped us cope with life before have become our worst enemy. And it's people like Greta who have a different way of seeing the world, who are leading the way, because we all now have to think and behave differently. We can't continue. Okay, so also she very much strongly makes the connections between climate crisis and capitalism. She talks about the connection between our insane, limitless, seemingly limitless consumption, high consumer lifestyle is tied to the people who were stolen from Africa for slavery and the lands that were stolen from indigenous people and the genocide that they all faced, and how this expropriation caused all this great excessive profit, and that in a lot of ways what is the root of human-driven climate change. And it's a big reason why racial justice and economic justice can't be separated from climate justice. It's all one big yarn ball of justice that needs to be dealt out. Okay, flipping through. Okay, so she starts talking about the Green New Deal a little bit. Page 20 starts on page 25, 26, 27, and I really enjoyed how she, on page 27, she talks about how for so long us, environmentalists and crazy eco people, we're always talking about, we're saying no a lot, right? We say no to that coal mine, no to that pipeline, no to that gas field. But with Green New Deal and all of the plans within the Green New Deal, there's finally something that we are starting to say yes to. Sure, no, still no to the pipeline, still no to the cracker plant, but yes to all of this. We have a plan for things we do want, and that is so much more powerful than just saying no, no, no all the time. Okay. Yeah, she talks about a little bit more about the justice part of the Green New Deal. She talks about not only the need for investments in renewable energy and clean transportation, she also calls for the communities who have borne the brunt of dirty industries and toxic industries to receive reparations and remediations, and for them to benefit from the transitions and to also help design them at the local level. And Naomi Klein also ties all this into the demands for universal health care and child care and higher education, like you saw in the video. So those things are also tied into the Green New Deal. Okay, let's see. She mentions a little bit about, can I wrap up? Okay, sorry, I'm babbling. So she mentions the New Deal and the issues with the New Deal. It's something that might be nice to look back upon, but the New Deal is mostly for white male workers, and Green New Deal hopes to remedy that. And she also, at the very end, talks about the dangers of eco-fascism and what she calls climate barbarism. She talks about the Christchurch shooter and the pushback against migrants at the border. And unfortunately, I'm out of time to really go into that. Maybe we could talk about that in discussion. But that's something, I don't know about you all, but for me personally, that scares the ever-living crap out of me, that's on the rise. And we, as climate justice folks, need to push back against that really hard, because it's quite terrifying. But all the people in this room give me a lot of hope and happiness. So yes, that's all I have to say. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so now we have about 15 minutes or so of open discussion. Then we'll take about a 5-minute break. So have at it.
There's a mic that should get passed around.
I'm sure everybody has a lot to say about it. I threw it the beginning part here, and it gave me a great sense of deja vu, because Greta was talking about all these young people taking action with a sense of moral clarity. And it reminded me of me when I was her age. That's how we started things. And it got me to thinking. We developed a theory about it back in the 1970s. We called it the relationship between the critical force and the main force. And I think that's the problem before us. A critical force is Greta and all the other young people like her. They hold up a mirror to society that has a moral clarity to it and challenges you to look in it, to look in it yourself and see what's wrong. But when all is said and done, the critical force is not the main force. The main force are the vast majority of workers here in Allegheny County and Beaver County, including the ones working in the cracker plant. That's the main force. So the question is, how do you link the critical force with the main force? Because you're not going to get to where we want to go without the main force. That's what's required. So anyway, that's the thought I had on that opening.
Tell us who you are.
Carl Davidson, Steel Valley DSA.
Anybody else?
Yeah. So you mentioned there's a huge gap between the critical force and what was the other, the main force. But when I think about the Green New Deal, And a lot of people think, oh, it's impossible. There's nothing we can do about it. We have conservatives coming out saying they're going to take away our hamburgers. We can't fly anymore. I mean, you should just read some of the things they say about it. It's ridiculous. Yeah, no more pickup trucks. You got the Cybertruck, maybe. But I feel like there was one point where those two forces were aligned, and that was during the New Deal. At least, I mean, for many sections of society, especially the white, working class, it was represented for them, and it was aligned. But I think a lot of people now, they don't see like a contemporary reference to view at and be like, we can accomplish these things. So we have to harken back to the New Deal to see what it was like. And so if you look at some of the things that conservatives said back then, they're saying the same things that we're saying now. But then when you looked at what they started saying in the 50s, you had Republicans like Eisenhower coming out and saying, if you're a politician who is against the New Deal, you're basically committing political suicide. So that like evolution of our politics is possible. And it's just that we've been conditioned so much lately that, from Republicans and the conservative side to think that these things are impossible. So I think it's up for Democrats and activists and progressives to completely recondition and change the debate. And I think that's possible.
Hi, everyone. I kind of wanted to build off the last two. My name is Kareem Candle, just a local activist. Wanted to build off of what the last two people said in sort of agreement that we need to unite a more broad working class coalition behind a movement like this. And the one note I want to bring to it is that people on the left, because things look so dreary and so urgent, and they are, can oftentimes over-focus on the negative, what's bad that's happening and what we can't do. And if we really want to bring it to everybody, we do have to bring the positive side too. I don't want to drive my car everywhere. I don't want to have to use a personal vehicle to get to everywhere I want to go. I don't want to, waste and over-consume. I want things to be healthy and healthy, and diets that work for everybody and everything like that. We should be able to sell to people that public transit will help you this way, and a rebuilding of your infrastructure will help you this way. This is what we can do for you by getting you jobs, by getting you fulfilling healthy life, so on and so forth. And I really want to push that aspect. So.
Hi, is that on? Hi, I'm Dee Kucherka with the Isaac Walton League. And what we have done is hand people tools. First, we start with something that is common ground, which is the use of plastics. Most people kind of fear plastics, know it's probably not a good idea to use them. And we go into schools and we go into art groups, we go into local communities, and we teach them alternatives to plastics. As we reduce our consumption of plastics, we reduce the fossil fuels that are needed to make the plastics, which then cuts into the profit of the fossil fuel industries. So you have to kind of approach people with a doable thing, a sustainable thing that they can grab onto, instead of coming at them really harsh where they have to pick a side. When we go into schools or into libraries, we say, we'd like to teach you about plastics. And people are very receptive to that. And then as we teach them, they learn about the background of plastics. And anytime we do any type of instructions, we give them tools, we give them handouts, and give them alternatives to empower them to say, this is a choice you can do. So I think it's very important for people so they don't start compartmentalizing like they were saying and getting overwhelmed that, what am I going to do? It's bigger than me. It's not. We each need to take a step. Everyone has a part to play in this. And it brings people together. So we need to find common ground and common tools that we can all use.
Give
In regard to your comment, my name is Carol Salbach. My name is Carol Salbach. I just read a very interesting book called Switch: How to Change When Change is Hard. And it was very interesting because it gave many examples of times when change worked and times when change didn't. And if you're really interested in trying to get people to change it, I suggest it as a good read because it had a lot of insight, I thought.
Could I just ask a quick question? What was a central insight in that book that you think is valuable?
Could I answer that, after I think about it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll get you next.
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm a student at Pitt. Something that I've appreciated, the little I know about the Green New Deal, is trying to dispense with some of the focus on individual consumer choices, which are not bad by any means, but also don't really direct attention to the more systematic, bigger problems, and instead trying to engage the public in a conversation about what big changes would really look like, the kind of changes that would be necessary to actually grapple with, or trying to avert some kind of climate crisis or catastrophe. I think a lot of that has to do with providing people new jobs and that sort of stuff. So I guess there was talk about ways to connect with people, not just in a critical way, which I think smartly, like Greta Thunberg, like has avoided endorsing any kind of like political party or anything like that. Partly, I think, because she wants to maintain her identity as that kind of critical voice, as you were saying. Anyways, Green New Deal can sort of connect people through their jobs, through the economy, through big changes, getting at these more systematic problems rather than trying to nibble around the edges with things that are very well intentioned, absolutely, but which in many cases don't get the level of leverage that we need on other problems.
I just wanted to react to your question about Switch. Oh, sorry, my name is Ann Wright. I live in South Oakland. So Switch builds on the work of Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Happiness Hypothesis and Righteous Mind. And he talks about how there's the cognitive and the sort of social mammal limbic aspects to things, and how if you're appealing only to the cognitive while what you do undermines people's sort of social mammal sense of connectedness and okayness, and then that's not going to work, and that you have to both make it sticky and make it appealing to the kind of internal mammal.
Hi, I'm Al Hart. I'm a retired labor activist. An aspect of this introductory chapter I thought was important is at the end she has a section I think called Eco-Fascism and Climate Barbarism. And, it's important to realize the clock is running out on us, not only in the sense that every year it's going to get worse climate-wise, we're going to have more disasters, but also because the right wing in this country and worldwide, which has never been restricted to making any sense or being consistent. They're more than happy to change their story and, as we see with our president, say contradictory things in the same sentence. So she points out they're not going to continue to deny that there's a climate crisis, because when it becomes undeniable, you have to stop denying it. So what do they do then? They're already doing it. Blame it on people of color, blame it on immigrants, blame it on people who are absolutely not the cause of the crisis, who aren't executives of fossil fuel companies. So I think it's really important for us to understand, if we don't very soon, people on the left, present a viable, workable, ready to go alternative to the coming catastrophe, that people are going to flock to fascist, racist answers. And Trump, the wall that Trump's building now on the Mexican border, they'll try to build something 50 times higher than that to keep everybody out.
Hello. Hello, Jerry Walsh. I just want to mention that, we're thinking of the changes we can make in the future, but we have to realize that we're already 10 to 20 years behind the changes that are going to happen. If we were to stop doing everything contributing to climate damage now, it would still take 10 to 20 years for things to build up and actually start to come back to a reasonable level.
Three words, but you can repeat it. Carbon dioxide is forever.
Helen, you?
So Robert Bowers, before he went to the Tree of Life to open fire on our neighbors, he posted that we were facing extinction as a species. He was an eco-terrorist. He was enraged with the Tree of Life congregation because they were strong supporters of HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Association. Forgive me, I forget the acronym. But they are dedicated to helping refugees from across the world, no matter what their race, sexual orientation, religion. So they took their experience of genocide in Germany and they formed a core commitment to helping other refugees, including now millions that are fleeing from our wars. And I'm a veteran of the Iraq War. I saw this firsthand. Right over here in this other room, there are Iraqi refugees I worked with who had to leave their homes because of our actions in Iraq. So there's a conquer and divide mentality where people who are struggling are told that it is the fault of the other. And they are not educated about how we have driven mass migration through our wars and through our addictive exploitation of oil. I went into Iraq to help thieve oil for the addiction that is killing us. So on the Tree of Life, there's these beautiful stained glass windows that, according to their website, show the cycle of life and depict our obligation to care for each other and for all these other creatures, all this other ecology that we are a part of. So we do indeed need to we need deep systemic change where we actually take part with our neighbors, other creatures, other life forms for survival. That image is so cool. That was posted by Republicans to discredit Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's an image of joy, right? We must move together to fight for the change we need. We must care for each other as we move forward together for that change. I think that along the way, we must not only act like this is a crisis, but remember what we're fighting for. The beauty all around of us, all the human beings in this room. I've worked with so many of you on so many good things, right? We need to remember we can create together a vision of the kind of community and world that we want. We've seen other cultures do it. We can look toward all kinds of successes. We need to remember both our failures and the successes that we can build on.